so we are at the bottom. We'll start from the bottom of 15b. Dvei Rabbi Shmuel Tana, which is second line, third line from the bottom, last word. No, 1 second. Yeah, and the third last line of 15b. So we're discussing, the Mishnah said that a bunch of categories, the first one of which was Zar, that they can't do the Kabbalah Sodom, they can't do the Avoda, really any Avoda after Shchita. So we're looking for a source for all these things, and we're working on Zar. How do we know Zar is ineligible? Tvei Rabbi Shmuel Tana. It's a kal v'chomer from someone who has a physical issue. A balmum a balmum can eat a carbon, right? He can eat. He's not disqualified from eating kachim. Im avad chilel, but he can't do the avoda. And if he does the avoda, it's invalid. So zar she'eno achal, a non-Kohen, he can't even eat it, right? So certainly, and udin she'im avad chilel, certainly he shouldn't be able to do the avoda. So Gemara says, well, wait a minute, not such a good kal v'chomer. Mal balmum shekain asa karev k'makriv. In case of balmum, it's something that applies to the animal as well as the person. Okay, so a balmum animal is invalid, and the balmum kohen is invalid to do the avoda. So then, whereas a balmum, whereas a zar, I mean, the zar doesn't apply to the animal. There's no such thing as a kohen animal. So maybe you can't compare them. Where it says tamei yachiach. Okay, so I will give you the kol chomer from tamei, right? The kohen is tamei, can't do the avoda, right? So Kohen, Kohen who is tamei can't do the avoda. So and tuma is something that applies also to the animal, right? An animal, a tamei animal, can't become a carbon. So the non-kahuna, like the and yet, sorry. Mhm. Okay, and tuma is something that applies only to the person, right? Not to the animal. I mean, a dead animal is tummy, but a live animal can't become tummy, right? And so we see that the only relevant factor is the disqualification of the person, whether it's tuma or you would say the same thing about zar and balmum.
The animal can become tamei? Is that the same?
That's correct. A live animal cannot become tamei. Right, a dead animal can become the source of tuma, but a live animal cannot become tamei.
Even if it touches something
that's correct.
The tamei.
That's correct. Only a person acquires tuma by touching something tamei. Well, that could apply to inanimate objects also.
But what about, don't we say a piece of
correct. An animal, a live animal, does not become tamei by touching, encountering something that's tamei.
No tamei midrash, no tamei nothing.
Right, correct.
But don't we say a piece of meat can become tamei? Or a piece of fruit, food?
Yeah, a dead animal can become tamei. Food can become tamei, but a live animal cannot become tamei. So Gemara says, well, wait a minute, malatame shekain mitame, but you can't compare to a kohen who's tamei because a tamei person can make someone else tamei, which is not the case about balmum or zar, right? If a zar touches somebody else, it touches a kohen, the kohen doesn't become a zar, right? So balmum yochich. So go back to balmum. Okay, so we'll go back to balmum v'chazar edin. So you keep going around in circles. Neither of these are perfect models, but Hatzala Shava Shabahem, but both Zar and Tameh have a similar characteristic. Shemus Harin. There's a isur not to do the avoda. V'imavdu chilu, and if they do the avoda, it's possible. Afani avizar. So that applies to both. We see that in the case of both Tuma and balmum. So often the avizar shemuzar v'imavad chilel. Zar is similar in that the zar is not allowed to do the avodah. If he does the avodah, it's possible, and so therefore we'll say um, um, that yeah. Therefore we'll say that if he does the avodah, it's no good.
And the Balmum
Um,
also can't do the avoda. Avoda.
right, right. So just as we see that Balmum and Tame can't do the can't do the avodah, and if they do it, it's no good. We'll say the same thing about Zar. Now Minolan Demuzhar. Um, how do we
What's
know
the same thing
that
about
a
a
Zar?
Balmum? Is that what you're saying? We have a Zar and a Talmud can't do the avoda. So we say the same thing about a Balmum, right?
No, no. We're trying to prove it about the Zar. The question is, how do we know that the Zar can't do the is invalidates the avodah? And the answer so far is that well, we see the same thing for Tameh and Balmum that if they do the
Oh,
avodah, it's possible. We'll say the same thing about Zar.
okay.
Now, Minal and the Muzar. How do we know that the Zar doesn't? So this is all predicated on the idea that there is an Isur to do it, right? So like we're saying that that Tame and Balmum, we know that they're forbidden to do it, and if they do it, the avodah is possible, b'diavad, right? So how do we know? Where's the prohibition for the czar not to do the avodah? Imi v'nazru chilu b'gufei ksiv. If you want to say the pasuk that we saw yesterday, v'nazru mikadshei b'nei Yisrael, that they should separate from the kadshim when they're tameh. Um, when they're, I'm sorry, that the czar should separate from doing the avada, achilul begufei ksivbei. Then like it's written right there in the pasuk, right? So that's what we said yesterday. We proved it from the pasuk, right? So don't tell me that that's the pasuk you want to use. You're trying to bring a different way that we're understanding there's a isur of for a zar to do the avodah. Elami v'zar lo yikrav aleichem. So here's another pasuk. Zar lo yikrav aleichem. A stranger, meaning a non-Kohen, shouldn't approach the Kohanim. So in other words, we're interpreting that possibly it shouldn't do the avodah. The Gemara says, well, you kill a mifrach. That might not be the case. Malas hadashav shebehen shekain lahutru b'bama. Um, so we wanted to prove this from the confluence of the two things, Tame and Balmum, that they can't do that if they do the avodah, it's possible. But wait a minute, they are different than Zar because Lohu Trubabama, right? Before there was a Beis Hamikdash, you had the idea of a bama. The person could erect a private altar and bring certain karbanos there, right? Private karbanos there. Um, so, um, so a now in the case of Obama, a czar is permitted to operate Obama, to bring a carbon on Obama, right? But the other two, Tameh and Balmum, they are not permitted on Obama. Okay, so they're not comparable. You can't derive the rules of Czar from the rules of Tameh and Balmum because they have this essential difference, right? Tameh and Balmum are not permitted on Obama, and the Czar is permitted on Obama. So maybe a Czar is permitted. It is does not invalidate the avodah. It says lo tema tame yochiach. Okay, fine. Don't use tame as part of the proof. Ela ema onen yochiach. We'll prove it from onen, from the confluence of onen, the mourner who hasn't yet buried the dead person, and the balmum. So Gemara says, well, mala onen sheken aser b'maser. Sorry. So first we're going to just try and prove it from onen. So just as an onen, the uh, the avoda is invalid. So too, we'll say azar, the avoda is invalid. But wait, malon sheken aser b'maser. But onen, he can't even eat maser, so he's more chomer. Maybe because being an onen is worse, he can't even eat maser, whereas a balmum, whereas a czar, sorry, whereas a czar can eat maser, right? Of course, a czar can eat maser. Anybody can eat maser. So why not just balmum
Master
yochech?
Shani
Hmm?
with the Master Shani, right? Or Master Behem or what? Master Shani, right?
Maser sheni, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Maser Sheni. That's right. So anybody can eat Maser Sheni. As a rule, you have to take it to your shalayim or redeem it,
Right.
but
Okay.
a non-Kohen is certainly eligible to eat it. So maybe it's not such a bad thing to be a zar. But maybe if a zar does the avoda, maybe it's okay. So Balmum Yochiach, no, we'll prove that from Balmum, right? V'chazradin. And again, we'll say, well, Balmum is also in a certain way more chamor. Lo Yizek Yirizev, Lo Yizek Yirizeh. Neither one can prove it by itself. But both of these together, um, Onin and Balmum, they both have the characteristic that it's usher for them to do the avoda, and if they do the avoda is invalid. So too Azar, it's usher in the avoda, and we'll also derive from that, just like the other two, that the avoda is invalid. So Hachanami Lifrach.
And not
So
a Kohen Gadol. He can do the avodah as when he's an own name, right?
okay,
Didn't we learn that
that
from Aaron
sounds right.
Cohen?
That sounds right, but that's a
So
special rule for the Kohen Gadol. So I don't
right.
see how that really enters into it.
I'm just one. I mean, there is an exception now, so it's
Okay.
not universal. The own name is not universal. The Gemara brings this up in many other places, other situations. Well, yeah, it's not universal because there's an exception, right?
Yeah, but I would say that doesn't really get into the logic of the argument because with a regular coin, everyone would agree, right?
Correct.
So we're going to prove just as a regular coin has to be can't be an onen. If he's an onen, the vote is invalid. So too we would say so too a zar.
No, I
Uh,
accept that, but so there are other places where the Gemara brings, well, there's an exception because you bring him, in this case, the Kohen Gadol. I
mhm.
mean, he
Okay.
was
Okay. So it's a point worth considering, but the Gemara doesn't. But the Gemara goes somewhere else about Hachanami Lifrach. But we could refute it in a different way. You have the same problem that both Balmum and Onen can't operate Obama, right? So whereas the Tsar can operate Obama, so maybe you can't derive one from the other. So Maski floor of Sama Breda Rava, Uman Lemeland, the only Osir Babala. Well, where do you get that from? Maybe an Onain, sure, I agree. Onain can't do the Avod on the base of Mikdash, but maybe he was allowed to do Obama. Um, Dilma Shari Bama. Maybe he's allowed to do the Bama. So in that case, it is you can use that Sada Shabbat. So that's a second way. This Sada Shabbat is a second way to understand how we know that the Tsar can't do the avoda, and if he does, the avoda is possible.
but is that correct that the Onan can um, sacrifice on Obama? Is that correct? I mean, this is a suggestion here, but is that the halacha? Is he allowed
At
to?
this point, we're kind of leaving that we're leaving it open. It, and I think Rashi points this out. At this point, we're saying, yeah, like you haven't proven to me that there's a problem with this kal vachomer, or with this kal vachomer, so the kal vachomer stands.
Rashi says Dilma Shari Babama. Is that
Yeah,
what you mean?
yes, right.
Umina Mikdash. So it's maybe. We don't.
Right. In other words, like, don't make this statement unless you can prove it. You haven't proven to me that an onain is possible. The avodah of Obama is possible for an onain. Um, so unless you have that proof, the kavachomer is fine.
Is there what is, do you know what is the halacha regarding it? I mean, that Bama doesn't exist anymore, but what what is the halacha? I mean, what would be the halacha, or do we not know?
I don't know. I think we might be getting back to this. Um,
I mean, it's not shaykh today, but
right, right,
I mean, it wouldn't even be shaykh if there's a Beit HaMikdash because I don't think.
right. Um, it only was shaykh before there was a Beis Hamikdash.
Correct, correct.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I don't know the answer. We may get to it later. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Okay. Now we have a third approach. How do we know the Azar does the avoda is possible? Mashar Shamar. Asik Chomer mi Yosef. We have a different Chomer for someone who does the avoda while sitting. So you're supposed to be standing while you do the avoda. Ma Yosef she'ochel. Um, and now, as far as eating the korban, if the kohen is sitting while he eats the korban, that's fine. You can sit at your table and eat your portion of the korban. Um, but imavad chilal. However, if you're sitting while you do the avoda, then that's puzzle. So zar sheino achel. So we can kal v'chomer zar. He can't even eat it sitting or standing. Can't eat it at all. So certainly, um, if he uh, if he sits while doing sorry, so certainly a zar would invalidate the avoda. And in Shimavad Chilel. So certainly, if he can't even eat the carbon, so he certainly would invalidate it by doing the avoda. So Gemara rejects this. Maliyosha should come apostle edus. Okay, wait a minute. Sitting has another aspect to it. You know what else you can't do when you're sitting? um, you know what else you can't do when you're sitting is give testimony. You have to be standing when you give testimony. So it then appears that there's something else going on with sitting, right? So you can't derive from sitting about a czar, right? Sitting the other, there's something else going on with sitting that it makes it different than a czar.
Well, what's the
Um,
point of the sitting? The bazaar can't do the avodah anyway.
Right, but
Uh,
we're saying the idea of sitting is more, there's something more to it than just invalidating avoda, right? It's like it's so bad that you can't even do testimony. Sitting is so bad that you can't even do edus, right?
Why does the
Whereas the czar
Gemara?
is not so bad. So maybe the
What?
czar is okay to do the avoda,
Even while sitting? I don't understand.
sitting or standing.
But,
Okay,
but
so we're
why does the
trying to,
Gemara
yeah,
even bring the concept of sitting? The czar can't do it anyway.
because we're trying to prove from the status of sitting, right? First we wanted to say, you know what, sitting is not so bad, and yet it invalidates the avoda. So a czar, which is bad, which is worse than sitting, is it certainly wouldn't validate the avoda. And now we're saying, well, wait a minute, sitting is actually really bad. It's worse than being a czar because a czar can give testimony, right? If he does it properly. But a sitting person cannot give testimony. So sitting is really bad. It's worse than being a czar.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So Gemara says, okay, let's try to rescue this. Miyoshev Talmid Chacham. Now, uh, yes, so this is kind of what you were getting at before. We'll take an exception. We'll take the if a person giving testimony is a Talmid Chacham, he's allowed to sit. Okay, so from a Talmid Chacham sitting, um, so the act of sitting for a Talmud Chacham is clearly not so bad because it doesn't mess up his testimony. Being a czar is worse. So just as a Talmud Chacham Kohen sitting doing the avoda is no good. A czar, which is worse because um, uh, he can't
So a
even.
Talmud Chacham can sit,
Yeah,
permitted to
he
sit.
can sit while he eats the carbon, and there's no problem of edus,
They
right?
do.
A Talmud Chacham is not affected by the sitting of a Talmud Chacham does not affect the quality of his edus, but it does affect the quality of his avoda, right? It's
Now,
bad.
does that
It's
also
bad to
apply
do
to
the
a?
avoda
I'm
if
sorry.
you're
Does it
talking.
also apply to a zaken? We say mipnei
Say
sevan
vatakum.
takum, right?
Yeah.
So if to a Talmud Chacham, and we compare those, the Gemara compares those somewhere between a Talmud Chacham and a zaken, and we give respect to them. So I would think it would also apply to a zaken as well, that he could give testimony while sitting.
Well, Zaken and Talmud Chacham is the same thing, no? I mean, oh, maybe not. I mean, an aged person. Okay, maybe. I mean, that's fine. I mean, the Gemara could have gone there, but it chose to prove it from a Talmud Chacham, so that's fine. Um, But the Gemara says no, but you could still have a problem with the Kal Chomer. Mal l'shem Yoshev Shekain Pasal Edus. Um, 1 second. So the Gemara doesn't like this idea. It's Mal l'shem Yoshev, like it's the category of sitting, the act of sitting. So the fact that you can make distinctions between a Talmud Chacham and a regular person when it comes uh, to sitting while doing Eidos, like that doesn't really tell me anything about the status of the act of sitting or the status of sitting. Like you were saying before, the Talmud Chacham is an exception, okay? But the idea of sitting is still a bigger problem, right? It's still so bad that you can't, in general, give testimony. So Gemara says, "Shem Yoshev lo parich." So this idea that the general category of sitting um, he's not referring to that. He wants to refer to specifically the Talmud Chacham. V'imtim tzolom aparich. And if you want to say that he would, exclude sitting in general, asra miyosef umechad mehanach. Then you could do it tzad shava, right? You could take look. Yosef is kind of bad, and Tameh is kind of bad. They have a similar. Like none of the other things affect Edus, right? Being a Tame doesn't affect your Edus, or well, being a Balmum doesn't affect your Edus, right? So take one of those and take the Yoshev, and what's the Tzad HaShaveh? What's the common denominator that that they can eat the carbon sitting. So and yet they can't do the avoda sitting. So same too about the czar. He can eat the carbon while sitting, but he can't do the avoda. Or no, he's not allowed to sit during the avoda. And if he does it, sorry, no, I'm mixing it up.
You can eat the carbon,
Do the
right?
same, yes, the same about a czar. He can't do. He's not permitted to do the avodah, and if he does it, it's puzzle. Just like
But
Yoshev, just like the common denominator of Yoshev and Tame, or Yoshev and Bama.
but he can eat it.
He can eat a korban if it's yeah,
Yeah.
if it's kachim kalim, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Um, V'yoshev de kasher b'bama minolan. Okay, where did you get the idea that that sitting you can do the avodah sitting at a bama? Amar Krag, because Torah says lamod lifnei Hashem l'sharso. The kohen has to stand before God to uh, to do the service, right? So we're taking it very literally. Lamod, he has to stand, and that's only lifnei Hashem. That's only in the mikdash. Lifnei Hashem v'lo lifnei bama. Okay. Fine. So we're done with we're happy. We have three possible ways to understand why avodah done by a czar is possible. Now we're going to move on to the next thing in the mission, which was onen. Okay, and onen again is a mourner who hasn't yet buried the dead. Minalan, where do you know that that makes the avodah possible? Tichsiv umin hamikdash lo yitzei v'lo yichalel. When it talks about a kohen gadol can't leave the mikdash v'lo yichalel, and he won't. Here we're understanding yichalel as he won't make the avodah possible. Ha'acher shelo yatsa chilal. So that means that someone who's not a kohen gadol is not subject to this rule. He has to leave the mikdash, right, when he's an onen. Um, so that implies that the avoda, if he's a regular kohen, stays in the mikdash, does the avoda, then it is possible. Rabbi Lazar Amar Mehacha. Rabbi Lazar has a different source. Hey Naomi Krivu, right? In the aftermath of the death of Dasan of Aviram, of no of no the sons of Aaron. Um,
Oh, I know. Not eat
oh my gosh. Um, Elazar Samar.
Avihu.
Nadav and Avihu, thank you very
Not
much.
of an
Yes,
Avihu.
yes, Nadav and Avihu. So Aaron says to Moshe in the aftermath, Hein hayom hikrivu esolasam hayitav bein Hashem. If they had, if they, meaning his sons, um, uh, if they had sacrificed, would God like it? No, that was a rhetorical question. Like certainly not. Ani hikrafti. it was I that did the karbanos. Um, so like Moshe
So
was
here is
saying,
referring to Elazar and Tamar. He's saying if
yeah,
they had done
yes,
it,
yes,
right?
yes, his sons, right? So Moshe is saying that um, the chatas gets burned because the brothers who did the avoda made it puzzle, and Aaron says no, it wasn't them, it was me, and because Aaron, am the Kohen Gadol, right? So that implies that I was the one that did the avoda. That's why it's valid. Indeed, if Elazar and Itamar, who were just regular Kohanim, had done it, then it would have been invalid. Bichlal di'inu akriv. If they, the sons of Aaron, Elazar and Itamar, had done the avoda, shapri yisarif. Then I understand why you would burn the chatas because it's no longer a good chatas. But so that implies that a regular Kohen does the avoda as an onen, it's no good. For Elazar, my Talmud lo Amar, I mean, Mikdash lo Yetze. So why doesn't Rebbe Elazar like the first pasuk? Um, Amalach, he would say, Miksiv ha'achar shlo yatsa chilal. It's not explicitly written, right? It's like we're telling you the rules of the Kohen Gadol. Maybe the rule is the same for a regular Kohen. It's not, but you can't prove it from that pasuk. Why doesn't the first opinion use the Nadav and Avihu example, the Elazar and Tamar example? Kasavar mipnei tuma nisrafat. No, you know why the chatas was burned, why it was considered invalid, not because it was done by an onen, but because it became tameh because of the presence of the dead bodies of Nadav and Avihu. Okay,
Wait. It
the
became Talmud. What became Talmud?
the carbon.
So it became Talmud
It's in the Ohel Moed with
before it was brought to the altar. No, after. Couldn't be.
after, yeah. So the avoda was done, and it became tameh, and that's why it became invalid and had to be burned,
How did
not
it become
because of
Talmud?
onen. Sorry,
How did it become Talmud?
because Nadav and Avihu were dead in the Yom Moed, so everything becomes tameh.
Oh, okay. Uh, but didn't Aaron didn't he burn the no, he ate from it, didn't he? He was allowed to eat from it, the chatat that he brought.
No, no, he
Aaron.
was. No, he's saying that it's that. Um, yeah, if
He
he
was
had
the one
done
who
it,
brought it,
yes, yes. If the Kohen Gadol had done it, it would have been fine.
he could eat
If
it.
it's just an onen problem,
He could
yeah,
eat from it.
yes,
So it
yes,
wasn't
yes.
burned completely. He burned it, but
It
he
wouldn't have been. No, but he's saying like if Aaron had done it, it would have been fine. But I didn't do it.
no,
Elazar
he
and
did
Itamar
it.
did it.
No, I thought he did it. He said if they had done it, it would have been puzzle. His
Right.
name was Aaron said no, they didn't do it.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah. You're right. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Yes, you're correct. You're correct. But since Aaron did it, it was fine.
so then he could eat. He ate part of it.
Yes, except that it had already been burned. Um,
No, I think
no, no. Moshe was saying it would burn. Yeah, he was saying don't burn it. Right, 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 right.
and he
Yes.
ate
So
part
then
of
he
it.
would eat from it.
Achalti chatat hayom. Isn't that what the Torah says?
Yes, yes, yes. That's right. That's right. Dvera Mishmaltana, we have a third approach for how do we know onen avoda is no good. Asi v'kal v'chomer balmum. We'll do it as a kal v'chomer, and here we're going to get into familiar territory from a balmum, right? Uma balmum shochel. A balmum can certainly eat the carbon. Imavat chila, but he can't do the avoda that makes it possible. Onan shein ochel, and onan who can't even eat it. It's even worse. Einodin shimavat chila. Certainly, the avoda would be possible if the onan did it. So Gemara says, no. Mal balmum shekain also bo craving kuma krivin. Um, there's an additional aspect to balmum. It's so bad that it applies to both the animal and the person doing the avoda, which is not the case about an onen. So where's the zar yachiach? Okay, prove him a zar. We know that the zar is can't do the avoda. It makes the avoda possible. Certainly, a zar doesn't. The status of zar doesn't apply to the animal as well. So between zar and balmum, we see the tzadashava. That they can't do the avoda and they make it possible. So we'll say the same thing about onen. So Gemara says malazar shekein lo takana. No, zar is really bad because a zar never becomes a non-zar. right? Whereas a tame or an onain, they can become an onain can get better, right? Um, so
But
Balmum
no,
Yochiach, so
no.
go to Balmum, right? That there are types of Balmum that never get better, right? That are permanent disqualifications. So you go around in circles, neither one is exactly like the other. Outside the Shavash Shaban, the common denominator, Shein Musari, and both Balmum and Zar are forbidden to do the avodah of imav chilul, and they make it possible. Afani avi onein shemusar v'imav chilal. So we'll apply that to the same rule to onein. Um, Okay. Heichon Muzar. So Gemara says, okay, so you've been saying that there's an Isur for the Onen to do the Avodah. Where does that come from? Elaim, I mean, Mikdash Layetze, if you want to take from the pasuk that the Kohen Gadol can't leave the Mikdash when he's an Onen, but every other Kohen can, Chilu Begufe Ksive, then that's like, you're again, we're using the same verse, the same pasuk itself. So you want to find a different source, find a different source. Don't rely on the same source that we said before. Elami heni krivu. So you're going to get it from the Nadav and Avihu thing. V'kasavar b'bnei aninus nisrafa, and you're holding that it was burned because it would be burned because they were on it. So you could but you could question that. There's no exception from like in the case of onen, every onen sorry, not the onen, but the balmum and the zar, there's no exception, right? If the balmum is disqualifying, it's for everybody. If you're a zar, it's for everybody. There's no example of a zar who can do the avoda, right? So you can't compare those to the onen where there's an exception, right? Yes, indeed, the onen category is similar, but there's exceptions. So maybe it's not so bad to be an onen because there can be exceptions. So the Kohen Gadol. So tell me,
That's what I mentioned
that's
before.
what you were getting at before. Yeah, very good. So Tame Yochiach. So the Gemara says, okay, so go with Tame. Malatame Shekain Matame. But the Gemara says, well, Tame is really bad because it makes somebody else Tame, right? Whereas an Onain, if an Onain touches somebody else, that person doesn't become an Onain, so it's not so bad. So maybe an Onain is okay to do the Avodah in the end. So Malatame. But yeah. So so go with the other ones. Go with the Balmum and the Zar, right? V'chazardin. So again, Hasad Shava Shabahan, the common denominator Shemus Harin, that they both are forbidden to the avoda and the avoda is possible. So we'll apply the same thing to onains. V'lifro. So Gemara says you can question that. Malasad Shabahan lo hutru miklal and eitzel kohen gadol b'karban yachid. Um, uh, there's no exception um, when it comes to a carbon yachid, right? So the Kohen Gadol can do the avodas and onein for a carbon sibur, but not for a carbon yachid. So shem tuma miya ishtari. Okay, we're talking about like the category of tuma. So yes, you'll have exceptions, whatever. So again, you can ask the same question here, Ken. But the Gemara seems to be satisfied that the category of tuma is sometimes an exception, sometimes permitted. Um, uh, and what would be an example like Tuma B'tzibur? So you can use the Sadashava um, uh, from you can use Tuma in the Sadashava because um, because there's sometimes have a because both the onin and the tame have exceptions, right? So it's fine to use them as the as the model for the onin.
What's the exception for the Tame again?
Tuma hutra b'tzibur. If most of the people are
Oh,
tame, then you can do carbon tzibur. There's a whole
but now we're
discussion.
saying we're saying for the Kohen Gadol lo hutu miklala etzel Kohen Gadol b'karbon yachid. He can, but wasn't the case of Aaron? Isn't that a carbon yachid? It's for his sons, and he was
No, that
permitted.
was I think that no, the miluim that was a public carbon. I mean, the Kohen can eat from the chatas from the public carbon. That's one of the rules. But it's certain the miluim, the inauguration of the Mishkan was certainly a public,
Oh,
certainly a carbon
so
tzibur
that was
system.
the he was bringing the carbon for the tzibor for the
Yes, yes.
so he wasn't bringing it for his oh,
Yeah,
I see.
no, the question
Right.
was who was doing the avoda, but it wasn't a private carbon of his sons. No, it was a private carbon tzibur.
It was for it was a carbon tzibor. So it wasn't if he was bringing his own carbon for a chatat for whatever something he did, he couldn't do that then, even as a Kohen Gadol.
Right,
When he
I
was an
suppose.
Owen, Onain, he could not have brought a
A
private.
private carbon. I think that's correct. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and now we have a fourth approach to how do we know an Onein's avoda is no good? Rav Mashar Amar, Azu Chomer Yoshev. Prove it from the sitting. So we saw this already. Ma Yoshev Sha'ochel, a sitting. You can sit down while you eat the carbon. Imavat Chilal, but if you sit down while you do the avoda, it's possible. Onein Shein Ochel. Onein is worse. Can't even eat the carbon. So certainly, Enodin Shemavat Chilal would certainly be the case that his avoda is possible. Where it says no, not necessarily. Mali Yosef became possible. We could say the same thing. The Yosef is actually so bad that it affects testimony. So Yosef Talmud Chacham. So okay, we'll prove it that no, sitting is not so bad because we see we'll prove it from a Talmud Chacham who's sitting can do testimony and he can eat the carbon, but he can't do the avoda sitting. So we'll say the same thing about no. So we'll ask the same question. Mali Shem Yosef Shekem possibly Yedus. No, we're talking about the category of sitting. Shem Yosef Leparich. No, he's not. He's not. He'll agree. Rav Masharsha will agree, but he's specifically trying to prove it from a Talmud Chacham who's sitting. Vimtim Salam Parich, and even if you'd say it would mess up his kal v'chomer, asim Yosef umechad mehalach, then do it sada shava from Yosef and one of the other ones like Tame, and you the common denominator could be applied to Onan.
If a person cannot stand, say his legs are weak, would this edut be pasul?
Oh, good question.
Let's say he's weak and he can't. Would that be
Great question. I don't know.
a
Maybe.
person comes
It
in a
sounds
wheelchair?
like
In a
uh-huh.
wheelchair, he cannot stand. Is he
Great
not
question.
allowed to give edut?
Great question. I don't know. I don't know. Sounds that would be kind of strange. So maybe that's another exception. I don't know. Okay, now onin puzzle. Now we're going to analyze a little more about onin. So we've established that if an onin does the avoda, it's no good, and there are four possible derivations of that. Amarava lo shanu ela b'carbon yachin. This only applies to a private carbon. Alo carbon tzibur maratza, but an onin who does a public carbon maratza, it works. Kal v'chomer mituma. How do I know? We'll make a kal v'chomer from tame. Ma tuma shelo hutra miklala etzel kohen gadol b'carbon yachid. So tuma, if a kohen a tame kohen does a carbon yachid, um, it's certainly no good. It's certainly no good. But hutra, it's a hedyot carbon tzibur. But if there's a carbon tzibur, there is an exception that allows a coin to be tame, right? A tuma b'tzibur. Aninu shehutra miklala it's kohen gadol carbon yachid. So being an onen, which also has an exception, whereas the kohen gadol is a uh, so a Kohen Gadol um, can't do a carbon yach. A Kohen Gadol onen can't do a carbon yachid, and the Shutra it's a Kohen Hedyot be carbon tzibur. So certainly a regular Kohen would be allowed. Uh, like if the Kohen Gadol is an exception to Aninus, so a regular Kohen should also be an exception. There would also could be an exception to Aninus. In other words, uh, we can see from the fact that Tuma has a exception for a carbon tzibur, we would also say that Aninus has an exception for a carbon tzibur.
Is that what is that the way the Gemara is going now? Because we were trying
Yeah, yeah.
earlier
Before we saw
deriving
differently.
the
Yes.
exception for the Kohen Gadol Bilvad.
That's
And
correct.
that's was
That's correct. The Rav is questioning
Itamar and
that.
Elazar were not Kohen Gadol yet. Neither one was.
Right. Right.
So
So
we
yes,
seem to
so
say that
Rav,
it would be puzzle for them to bring it. They were Kohen Hedyot, right?
yes, this does appear to be contrary to what we were saying before. That's fine. Rav seems to be arguing with that. Okay, but we're not done. Maskif la Rav bar Ahilai, this Rav bar Ahilai asks the following question. Lo tusar aninus etzel kohen gadol b'korban yachid mikal v'chomer. Don't say that being an onain is okay for a kohen gadol with a korban yachid because of this kol v'chomer. Ma tuma shutre etzel kohen hadya b'tzibur. Tuma, which you can be tame if you're an ordinary kohen for a korban tzibur. Lo hutra etzel kohen gadol b'korban yachid. Um, is not, we don't say that you can, that it's okay for a Kohen Gadol to do one second. So Tuma, for an ordinary Kohen, he can do a carbon sibur, but not a Kohen Gadol. Aninus shalohutre, so Kohen Hedyot be carbon sibur. So an onen, which the regular coin does not have an exception for aninus. He can't, if he's an onen, he can't do a carbon tzibur. And adin shelo tutar etzel kohen gadol carbon yachid. So we should say the same thing about the kohen gadol and the carbon yachid. That it's still no good to do as an onen. Um, so
Can you say that again? This got a little confusing here.
okay, all right. Um, Yes, it is kind of confusing. So, aninus for a Kohen Gadol, right? A Kohen Gadol who's an onen. Um, that's what we're after. We're trying to prove that um, that a Kohen Gadol who's an onen can't do a carbon yachid, okay? Even though he can do a carbon tzibur, okay? So this is how it goes. So look at Tuma, right? Hutra itzel coin hedia b'tzibur. A regular coin who's tame can do a carbon tzibur, okay? But a coin gadol cannot. And how do we know that? The Gemara there's another Gemara that has the proof for that. Um,
Well, why is that? Well, why is a Kohen Gadol prohibited, but a Kohen Hedyot is permitted? The Korban Tzibur when they are Tameh.
1 second. Okay, ask a question again.
Why is that a Kohen Hedyot is permitted to do Korban Tzibur when he's Tameh, but a Kohen Gadol is forbidden
Oh, okay.
if he's
Um,
Tameh?
okay, we know that from um, okay, so we didn't get to the source of that. That's a Gemara in Psachim, where the Gemara gets that from a pasuk that a regular Kohen who is Tameh can do the avoda for a carbon sibur, but not a Kohen Gadol. He's special. He's prohibited from doing that as a Tameh. So we don't have the source in the Gemara here, but it comes from the Gemara in Psachim. Um,
I mean, it
okay, and
seems
that
odd that a Kohen Hedyot would be permitted to do the avodah when he's Tameh.
one more time that the
It seems unusual that a Kohen Hedyot would be permitted to do the avodah when he's Tameh. Where do we get that
for a carbon
permission?
for a carbon seabor.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
It seems strange. If he's tamei, why would he be permitted? I can understand the Kohen Gadol
I'm
being
not sure if it's
forbidden.
permitted or if it's b'diavad, if it's still kosher. But still, yeah,
I don't
you
know
would
if
think
there's
it would
I don't
be
know if there's a big
invalidated.
nafkamina there. Once if he does it, he does it. I mean, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
but
but then you have to do it again, right? If it makes a difference if it's b'diavad, if it's possible or not. If it's possible, then you have to do it again, right? If it's a carbon tummy, let's say it's a carbon seabor, you have to bring one every day, and you brought one that's no good, you still have to do it again.
no, if we say if it's kosher, if we say it's permitted, even b'diavad, I mean, I'm not sure what if it's permitted. He does not have to do it again, right?
Right. No, I think so. So I'm saying I think we're not asking if it's permitted. We're just saying whether it's possible or not. I'm not sure. I might be incorrect there.
I mean, it just seems that why is he allowed to to do it? I mean, okay, why is it the carbon?
Because it's a carbon seabor. So we have a general principle, tuma hutra bit seabor,
Okay,
which we
Tuma
often
Huta
understand.
B'tzibor. So then, if
Yeah.
that's the case, why would the Kohen Gadol not be allowed to?
Oh, the Kohen Gadol is special, right? He has to be more pure than everybody else, right? He has all kinds of special rules. He can't marry a widow, for example,
I understand that, but if 100% of the people are Talmud, and even him, why wouldn't he be allowed to bring it as well?
because he's special.
All right.
I guess. I mean, that's the only that's kind of how I understand what it's getting at here.
Yeah, but
Um,
we allow him to bring it when he's an onain.
right, correct.
So if he's
Again,
special,
because he's
why is he
special. Yeah,
permitted there?
okay. Yeah, it goes kind of in two different directions, right? He's special, so he's
He's
still
not
the
that
Kohen
special. He's
Gadol.
special, but not that special.
Yeah, or he's special. Yeah, like Onin and Tuma are two different things. Onin is a personal status, and well, so is Tuma. Uh, yeah, it's interesting, right? That they kind of go in different directions. Yeah. Um,
So I
okay.
mean, it gets a little confusing in this whole section, and and so what are we saying here at the end? Hutra Eitzel Kohen Edyot Bekarbon, and so it would be permitted. What they want to learn from Tuma to own to Aninut here, and some that's the whole piece of Matkifle Rababar Hirai.
Right. What I think what he's trying to do is like demonstrate the flaws in Rava's argument. Okay.
Well,
Um,
Enochinami, but what
yeah.
it's I got lost in here somewhere.
So Rava's trying to say a kal vachomer, right? From Tuma to Onen, right? Um, just as Tuma, which still applies to a Kohen Gadol for a carbon yachid. Um,
To a carbon Sibor, you said.
yeah. Okay, we want to apply from Tuma. So yeah, for Tuma for a Tuma for a regular coin for a carbon Sibor is okay. So maybe we should say the same thing about an Onin for a regular coin for a carbon Sibor, right? That's Rava's Kal V'chomer, right? Apply the rule of Tuma for a coin Hedyot, um, who is Tame for a carbon Sibor. Apply that to Onin also. That maybe a coin Hedyot who's an Onin should also be able to bring a carbon Sibor, right? Um, and Rava's trying to question that.
Which Rava Bar Ilai?
Rava Bar Achilai is questioning that. Um, and here's the second thing that Rava Bar Achilai says: "V'tutar tuma etzel." If you accept Rava's approach, then tutar tuma etzel kohen gadol b'carbon yachid mikol v'chomer. Then you also could say that a kohen gadol who is tame should be allowed to bring a carbon yachid. if you accept Rava's logic. Why? Ma ninu shlohu teretzel kohen hedyot b'karban tzibur. An onain for a kohen hedyot, he can't bring a carbon seabor, but Hutreitzel Kohen Gadol with carbon yachid. But a Kohen Gadol who's an onain can bring a carbon yachid. So
No.
Tuma Hutreitzel Kohen Hedyot carbon seabor. So Tuma, which is okay for a regular Kohen for a carbon seabor, and Odin Hutreitzel Kohen Gadol carbon yachid should also apply. We should allow the Kohen Gadol to bring the carbon yachid as a carb as an onain.
Didn't we say lo hutro etzel kohen gadol
But we know that's not
carbon
the case.
yachid?
But we know that's not the case. So that's why he's saying that Rava's logic is not, is not really that great, because if you apply that logic in these other cases, it doesn't work. And thirdly, velotu tartuma itzel kohen hadjit b'korban tzibur mikal v'chomer. You could also use the same kal v'chomer logic. Oh wow, it's late. Okay, let's just try and finish up. Um,
So he wants
mm,
to say that you could say that a kohen gadol could be permitted, according to your logic, Rava, that a kohen gadol could be permitted to bring a korban yachid bisman aninut. Is that what he wants to challenge him? He says, according to your logic, that a kohen gadol should be able to bring a korban yachid even when he's an onain. That's what he wants to ask him.
yeah, but we know that's not the case.
Right.
And then thirdly, the third theoretical kal vachomer that we do not use, um, uh, which demonstrates the flaw in Rava's logic, is as follows: Velo tutar tuma esel kohen hedyot b'korban tzibur mikal vachomer. You could also use the same logic for a kal vachomer um, to say that a kohen hedyot should not be able to do a carbon tzibur. Um, um,
When he's in Tuma, when he's Tame.
Right. And what would that call v'chomer? Re'umanu shehu treis l'kohen gadol b'carbon yachid, lo hu treis l'kohen hedyot b'carbon sibor. You would the kal v'chomer theoretically would go like this, right? An onain kohen gadol who's allowed to do a carbon yachid. Um,
But we don't allow that.
right.
How can you start with that if we don't allow that? We've said before we don't allow that.
Um, one second. Well, I mean, shehu treis l'kohen gadol b'carbon yachid. Uh, let's see. No, no, that's what we said all along. A Kohen Gadol Onen can do a carbon yachid, just not a
No,
carbon sibur.
no, just the opposite. We said we can do the miluim. A Kohen Gadol can do the korban sibor when he's an onain, right? But they cannot perform a korban yachid if he's an onain. Or what are we saying? No, that's regarding that's if he's an onain. Now we're saying something different regarding tuma. Is that what we're going to learn from tuma to onain, onain to tuma? Yeah.
Um, let's see.
Yeah. No.
Oh no, Rava's whole thing is he's trying to say that Loshanu ala b'carbon yachid, right? That the Onen uh, only applies to a the Onan can't do only a carbon yachid, but the Kohen Gadol is an exception to that. Now, yeah, I understand that the case of Nadav and Avihu might question that, might contradict that, but not everybody agrees what's going on there. So I think we have to leave that out.
I thought we were saying that a korban that a korban he cannot perform a korban yachid, just a korban tzibor. That it was this man miluim, so that was permitted. But if it was korban yachid,
Right.
yachid for himself, he could not perform that.
Okay, that is what
Bring
we
the
saw
kata.
before, but as I'm saying, it's not clear. There's different ways of looking at that of how to interpret that incident. So yes, before we followed that line, but Rava could maybe the only way to understand this, I think, is that yeah, Rava has a different view of that of what happened there. Um, it's unclear who brought the before we interpreted it that um, that Aaron himself brought that carbon, and he and yes, and it was different for him because it was a carbon seabor. But you don't have to interpret it that way. It could be that wasn't the case.
Well, then what would be the case?
That
I mean,
uh,
Itamar Elazar could not bring this korban. So,
yeah,
if it was a, I mean, I don't, it's and we interpret that that's a korban tzibur, right? So they couldn't, but Aaron could. If it's a korban yachid, I mean, why would they be bringing their own korban? For what? They would be bringing a korban. He would bring his own korban. It would be permitted. I mean, I understood it better when we explained, we learned earlier that it's a korban tzibur. So then this one could bring, he could not, they could not bring it. They were korban hediot. So Aaron was a korban gadol, not a korban, he was a kohen gadol. So he could do the avodah, even though he was only,
yeah, I
he
hear
could
what you're
not.
saying. Okay, I gotta tell you, I have lost the thread here. I think your question is a good question. Um,
That was fine before. Then we got into Rava and Bari Lai, and I was getting confused what they're trying, which way they're going there. And then it got. I mean, all the gates were
all
open.
right.
I
Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Yeah, I've now gotten thoroughly confused as well, but we have to leave it here. I'm gonna see if maybe David can recap this tomorrow for us, hopefully. Um, but yes, I agree with you. I've kind of lost the thread as well. But we have to call it here for today, so we'll see what we can if we can clean this up tomorrow.
okay.
All right. Thank you for keeping us honest here. But yeah, this is the logic here is really kind of difficult to follow.
All
All
right.
right. Have a good day, everybody.
A good day.